Returning now to the war in the Middle East, efforts are underway right now towards a new hostage release in exchange for another temporary truce. Journalist Ismail Haniyeh is in Jerusalem with the latest on that.
We're hearing that the leader of Hamas from the external leadership, that is Ismail Haniyeh, he's no longer based in the Gaza Strip. He's gone to Cairo to actually have these talks. And that's a breakthrough because there haven't been these negotiations in Cairo since the last truce collapsed on November the 30th, so almost 3 weeks ago now. And his position, or what's being reported to us, is that the talks are intensive, but that Hamas and Israel are still some way apart. Hamas wants the conflict to end and perhaps a negotiation for all of the hostages. Israel says it's not ready to end the conflict yet. It didn't choose to start it, and it will end it when it chooses to, so say Israeli politicians. So what they're offering is a pause, and they want the most vulnerable hostages, I guess you'd call them, Hannah. So the oldest, the sickest, the ones who were wounded, the women and children. That works out to about 40 hostages. There'll be a pause for them as there was previously, and a prisoner exchange also. So that's what's being discussed. Will that difference be able to be bridged? We don't know. But I will say that now that today, for the first time, there was 24 hours without rockets from Gaza into Israel. You know, that's the first time since the truce, and before the truce, it's the first time since October the 7th. So I'm taking that as a sign, but I don't think it's a done deal yet.
So there are new details as well about those 3 hostages we were talking about last week, mistakenly shot dead by Israeli troops. That was last Friday in Gaza. And it appears they may have been free from their captors for several days when they were killed.
That's right. You know, this story emerges in dribs and drabs, and it's information that we have that actually it appears that they were held by Hamas in captivity for 65 days. They were then on their own, surviving alone in Gaza for 5 more days, expecting rescue, when they were then shot. And we know this because as part of its military teams, Israel has dogs with cameras, and one dog came in, saw them, and then the dog was shot by Hamas militants who were there. There was a firefight, which is why the dog's camera wasn't seen immediately. The dog was killed. The militants were killed, and then his camera kept rolling. The dog's camera kept rolling. We hear the voices of the hostages saying, "We're hostages. We're here. Please rescue us." And then we know how that ended. And I just want to say that this story has so horrified Israelis, and it's just had such a vast, really a huge impact here. And I think in a way it's actually kickstarted these hostage negotiations. You know, Hannah, there was no real talk of hostage negotiations and no real effort before they were shot on Friday. So one Israeli media analyst says that the IDF promised to do this investigation with transparency, which it has been doing, but every revelation is more painful. First, you know, they came out with their hands up, then they were holding a white flag, and now they were on their own there for 5 days.
Journalist Ismail Haniyeh in Jerusalem. The mother of one of those 3 hostages mistakenly shot dead by Israeli troops has sent a message to the army unit involved. 28-year-old Ismail Haniyeh was kidnapped by Hamas at his home on October 7th. Iris Haniyeh addressed the Army unit in an audio message. In a transcript, she tells the soldiers, "I know that everything that happened is completely not your fault. It's nobody's fault except Hamas." She adds the action taken was, quote, "likely the right thing to do at the moment," and her family isn't angry with them. For the first time since the war began, aid trucks have traveled directly from Jordan into Gaza. The 46-truck convoy, organized by the World Food Program, carried in more than 750 tons of desperately needed supplies. It entered the Palestinian territory via a recently opened border crossing in Israel. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is calling for more targeted operations by Israel to prevent civilian casualties in Gaza. He's also demanding worldwide condemnation of Hamas. The comments came in a year-end news conference, which also touched on other global issues. Here's Washington correspondent Richard Madden.
I think the biggest takeaway is it's been a tough year for diplomacy. Questions about Israel and Ukraine dominating that end-of-the-year press conference from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. First, on Israel's war against Hamas. As you noted, Blinken reiterated America supports Israel's right to defend itself, but warned the White House wants to see a lower intensity shift in the war, targeting Hamas leadership and away from those mass bombings in Gaza that's killing innocent civilians. But in that note, he warned the war cannot end with Hamas staying in control. Take a listen to Secretary Blinken.
We hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see. I hear virtually no one saying, demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that. How can it be that there are no demands made of the aggressor and only demands made of the victim? So it would be good if there was a strong international voice pressing Hamas to do what's necessary to end this.
Now, Blinken says he's encouraged by talks to set up another pause in the war for a hostage exchange, which includes 8 Americans still being held by Hamas.